I see a lot of people misuse deception and manipulation. So today we're going to define and differentiate deception and manipulation, not just so you understand the terms, but so you can understand power, influence, and intelligence more clearly. But before we begin, there's one necessary clarification I need to make. You can deceive someone to manipulate them, and you can manipulate someone to deceive them. They often work together. And you see a lot of characters like Yagami, Lelouch, Hannibal, and Scofield use both, but they are not the same thing. And confusing them destroys the distinction. So now that we're good on that, let's start with deception. So deception is the purposeful falsification of someone's perception of the truth. And I say perception intentionally, perception, deception, get that together. But I say that intentionally because what matters is what the target is led to believe what is true, right? And the best way to describe deception is epistemic sabotage. Deception centers on creating false beliefs and erroneous conclusions. And proper deception does not rely on controlling a person's behavior or overriding their agency, right? Instead, it works by corrupting the information on which their reasoning depends. So remember, deception does not corrupt the judgment itself. It corrupts the basis on the reasoning of the judgment or the reasoning itself, right? Like Yagami, he doesn't forcefully change L's judgment. He looks to change the basis or the reasoning of the judgment. Think of the potato chip strategy, which was to falsify and conceal the truth of who Kira is from L. So how does deception work? The target of deception still thinks, reasons, and follows logic all on their own, but under information that has been deliberately falsified. This falsification does not need to be verbal or purely logical. It can occur through evidence, context, attribution, or the way events are framed. Think of Beyond Birthday. He's a great example of that. In deception, the target accepts a false state of affairs as true and then reasons forward from it. And the reasoning process can be entirely intact while still being led to a false conclusion. It can be sound and valid. And this is why effective deception often feels clean rather than forceful. It's more eloquent. The target does not feel dominated or coerced, because that's not what deception is, but they feel correct because you are giving them what they deem to be the truth. Their conclusions is internally justified. This is what makes Baku Madarame so devastating, by the way. So right, deception doesn't look to dominate someone's mind. It simply looks to misinform it. So some examples of deception, these are just some, would be feeding false premises, where the target reasons from incorrect facts. Think of Light's fake rule in the Death Note. Or maybe it's fabricating or corrupting evidence, where the information base itself is falsified. Think of Hannibal Lecter fabricating his own crime scenes so Will thinks a certain way. Or maybe it's false constraints, where possibilities are hidden or concealed or denied outright. This is where Akiyama Shinichi from Liar Game excels. He conceals a possible winning strategy that he'll deploy, or rather employ, later on and defeat his opponents with. But he makes his opponents think that the strategy can't even be fathomed or orchestrated. And then another one would be epistemic dependence. This is a really interesting one, using the target's very way of verifying the truth against them, or the reasoning itself. So this would be Lelouch deceiving Schneisel via a pre-recorded message and using precise words that would make it certain to Schneisel that he's talking with the actual Lelouch, but rather he's being deceived because Lelouch is using Schneisel's own epistemic understanding of the situation against him. So all of these operate the same way, and they convince someone of a falsehood, and that falsehood directly produces the conclusion that the target makes. Remember, epistemic sabotage. So another excellent example of deception would be Prison Break Season 5. So, spoilers. Poseidon initially framed Michael by fabricating a scenario that made it appear as if Michael had committed the murder, right? When in reality, Poseidon was the one that was responsible. Michael's deception involved fabricating and framing the truth. He engineered a scenario in which Poseidon reenacted the very way he had framed Michael. It's like reverse deception almost. Rather than inventing a lie, falsification, Michael simply recreated the truth through environmental fabrication by using Poseidon's own methods against him. And this is an example of how you can use the truth to deceive. It's not about falsifying the truth, but rather someone's perception of the truth, hoodwinking someone's perception of the truth. Okay, so now let's talk about manipulation. Manipulation is the control and influence of someone's behavior. It's all about behavioral architecture, controlling and predicting choices. It works by utilizing a person's psychology, their emotions, desires, fears, motivations, values, and sense of self, and shaping the conditions under which they act. And unlike deception, manipulation does not primarily target a perception of the truth. It targets the action of the perception. Someone can understand the situation accurately and still be manipulated, because manipulation does not require convincing someone of a falsehood. So how does manipulation work? Well, manipulation interferes with how judgment functions. The person still reasons, they still choose, and they still feel autonomous. But the structure surrounding their judgment has been shaped. Manipulation works, for example, by influencing what someone deems to be significant, what they consider morally or logically correct, what feels consistent with their identity, how they experience the least amount of cognitive dissonance, how an action aligns with their values, and how their judgment sort of aligns with the course of actions being insinuated. And none of these involve falsifying information. None of this involves misinformation, right? It can, but that's not the point. Manipulation shapes already established systems of thought and behavior rather than corrupting them. The mind isn't necessarily misinformed. It's guided through suasion, if you will. So an excellent example of manipulation would be Hannibal Lecter. You see, Hannibal, he manipulates Will Graham by exploiting Will's extreme empathy. Will's ability to psychologically inhabit other people is what defines him, and Will understands that. Hannibal understands that. And Hannibal recognizes the process of that. So he encourages Will to explore darker perspectives, sit with violent minds longer, and treat those internal experiences as meaningful rather than pathological. You see, Hannibal repeatedly validates Will's perception, making Hannibal the most coherent psychological stabilizer in Will's life. Hannibal's manipulation works because he extracts Will's strongest cognitive trait, and that becomes the basis or the apparatus of control. Okay, so all in all, deception works by convincing someone of a falsehood. Manipulation works by influencing behavior through psychology, structure, and frameworks. Deception corrupts what the mind reasons from. Manipulation shapes how the mind decides and acts. And one is not inherently better than the other, and often they are used in tandem. It's all about being able to differentiate them, see the differences, and then pinpoint what's more apparent. Okay, so I hope this helps, and do let me know if you want more content like this. See ya.